Well, let's talk about Pascal Siakam. Should we trade him? Should we keep him? And I've seen the chat all throughout the stream. Should the Raptors keep a hold of Pascal Siakam? Or with 1 year left on his contract, is this the best time to let him go? That is the big conversation of the day. So if you're looking at the thumbnail on the live stream right now, there's a lot of conversations about Dejente Murry and the Atlanta Hawks being interested in Pascal Siakam. And it really felt as though they were interested in the player. And I think there were some legitimate offers on the table because they delayed signing Kobe Buffkin to his rookie contract, which means they could trade the draft rights to the player for the player. Once they signed Kobe Buffkin, which they did, they now have to wait 30 days before they can trade him. So trading the draft rights, that's gone. But they were interested for a while. Dejente Murry as well just signed his extension literally like 2 hours ago at the time of recording right now. Dejente Murry signed an extension, 4 years, $120 million. I think that's a pretty fair value for Dejente Murry going forward, but that takes a Dejente Murry deal off the table for the Raptors to execute for Pascal Siakam. But the conversations were there about the Atlanta Hawks. Conversations could be there about the Sacramento Kings, which I think is the best trade partner for the Raptors. And conversations could be there about some wild cards who also want to get the player. But what I really want to focus on here with you guys is, do you think this is a good time to trade Pascal Siakam? Because right now, I'm getting more used to the idea that Barnes plays point guard, Trent at the 2, OG at the 3, Siakam at the 4, Pearl at the 5. I'm getting a little bit more used to that idea of putting these players together for sure. But is it enough to risk the year going forward of Pascal Siakam being a UFA? Because the conversations right now, Michael Grange really stirred the pot yesterday with an article on Sportsnet talking about the Raptors maybe really being on track to trade a player, and they're shopping him around right now. So as far as extension talks go, does Pascal Siakam want to extend with a year on his contract, a year left on his contract, when there's all these conversations the Raptors may trade him? What if he signs the extension, all of a sudden the Raptors send him where they want to send him, and Siakam has no say? Wouldn't he rather have say at the end of the season as an unrestricted free agent? Big conversation there. Also, there's some reports coming up from some credible sources saying that Siakam wants to stay with the Raptors regardless and wants to be a part of this team, likes Toronto, doesn't want to go anywhere. So there's all these conversations around the player. But I think the people who want to trade Pascal Siakam, that conversation stems from the Raptors are a team desperate to compete, desperate to get involved in this league driven by parity at the moment. And he's on a 1 year contract where, hey, we just saw what could happen with a guy at a 1 year contract. We would have expected Fred VanVleet stayed with the Raptors, but Houston opened up a ton of cap space, make an offer that he can't refuse, and all of a sudden our hands are tied. There was nothing we could do about it. So you run the risk once again of doing that. Now, I don't want to play like that. By the front office, I can't look at that and be scared and be like, wow, like we've lost all these guys to free agency. We can't, like, we're scared. We have to get what we can for him now, or else we may not get anything for him. I think that should play a little bit, but that shouldn't be the overwhelming factor because you don't want to trade him and lose the trade at the end of the day and get a bad deal out of it. So the difficulty in making this trade is Siakam's on a 1 year contract. That's difficult for us to move because teams are looking at this one like, damn, 1 year, what if he leaves at the end of the season? So would an extension have to kind of be on the table for Siakam to sign with a new team as soon as he's traded, kind of like the way Kristaps Porzingis was moved to the Boston Celtics? That would certainly have to be in play, I think, if a team were to pick him up. But based on us from a Raptors perspective, why to move him? You get in younger players, you get in draft picks, and you start to develop a little bit more going forward. You start to develop a little bit more going forward with this team. You don't have your pick this year. That kind of sucks, but why like waste a year not getting the most out of your young players when you can maybe take the year to develop these guys a little bit more? You know, you can also extend him, which we'll have to talk about as well. But, you know, the trade isn't necessarily as driven by the fact that the player is on a one-year contract. The trade is more driven by this team is not good enough to be competitive. Let's get a good trade for Siakam at maybe the height of his powers. Maybe what we just saw from Siakam last season was the best we're ever going to see from him. So let's cash in now. Let's get a bunch of young players. Let's put a team in place for Scottie Barnes to be the most successful that he can possibly be and see where it takes us. Now, on the flip side of things, maybe Siakam's value isn't at its highest right now because he's on a one-year contract. And we saw Kristaps Porzingis coming off of by far and away his best season. He went for peanuts to the Boston Celtics. Different player, different circumstances for the Washington Wizards. But if there's a great deal in place for Pascal Siakam, I would want to move him. If there's a great deal in place. But based on all the factors that I've laid out, based on Atlanta signing Dejente Murray, based on Masai Ujiri's consistent, very high asking prices for Pascal Siakam, you're probably not going to get a deal that you feel like you're winning if you're the Raptors at this present point. So look to try and extend the player, and then you have all this time now to make those conversations. So this is where the conversation would have to go now for the Raptors. If you don't want to lose Siakam for nothing, well, get this guy an extension. The Fred VanVleet thing never worked out for the Raptors. We don't know if that was on the Raptors or Fred VanVleet. 4 years, $118 million. At the end of the day, probably was a pretty fair offer from Fred VanVleet, and there's some certain things that really suggest that Fred VanVleet was regrettable in not taking that 4-year, $118 million contract. Ended up working out for him by signing with the Houston Rockets for that fat-ass contract. But we don't want to get to that point again. So I think extending is the best thing to do. Siakam played this whole season because he wanted to make All-NBA, to be in line for a Supermax. That's no longer in play, so they can work on an extension at this present moment. We're asked in chat here, why hasn't Siakam signed an extension yet? Well, his name is all over NBA media as a possible trade candidate. So, Siakam, worried about his future, doesn't want to sign an extension right now. There's a variety of things. He could not want to sign an extension because he doesn't know the Raptors want to keep him long term. He could not be signing an extension because the Raptors don't know what they want to do with him. He could not be signing an extension because they're working on it but haven't come to an agreeable number just yet. The agreeable number for Pascal Siakam, 2-time All-Star, 2-NBA, probably the max. It's probably the max. Then there's conversations about, is giving him the max the best thing? Is that going to handcuff the team as far as building around him going forward? So there's all these different conversations. I think ultimately you're not going to get a fantastic trade for him this offseason. I'd be a little bit surprised if Pascal Siakam was traded this offseason. I'd be very surprised. I'd say there's probably less than a 20% chance Siakam gets traded. That's my thoughts. Losing him for free is not an option. So get a deal done. Get this guy extended because you got to worry about OG next summer because he's not extending this summer. There's no reason for OG to extend. There's a reason to extend Pascal. There's a reason for him to sign. So let's get Siakam signed. Let's not have to worry about this. Let's commit to this team for the season. Barnes is a point guard with Trent, OG, Siakam, Poeltl. Schroeder is your sixth man. Close his game in your small ball lineups. That's a team that, hey, can challenge for a playoff position. Get to next summer and make your decisions. Figure out what you're going to do. Because I don't think you're going to get the right deal for Siakam right now, and he's far too good of a player to just discard. Top 5 Raptor of all time, probably. Wants to stay here. Let's get that deal done. So there's some pros to trading Pascal Siakam. There's some cons to trading Siakam, and I think ultimately the cons outweigh the pros. Unless that deal is in place. That very, very good deal is in place to get it done. So, Pascal Siakam, is it overpaying Siakam? 2-time All-NBA, 2-time All-Star. There's a max on contracts. I just saw Tyrese Halliburton sign a max. I just saw Domantas Sabonis sign a max. If Sabonis is getting a max, listen. I'm not trying to disrespect Sabonis, but Siakam is a max caliber player. That's it. He's a max contract caliber player. So get him on the contract, get him back with the team, and then you have some more time to think about this and more time to decide what the thing is. So that it's not a situation of either overpay or lose him. You're paying him what he's worth, which is a max contract. You're going to keep the player and have some decisions to make. That's ultimately, I think, the way things will go this offseason. I want to get this contract done. OG's max this summer is not high enough of what it could be next summer. It's not high enough for him to take, so he'll likely not sign an extension. Let's not worry about 2 free agents next summer. Let's worry about 1 and do this Pascal Siakam contract. Work on that because he's a talented player. The team will be, look, they'll be fun this season. They'll be probably a playing team. They could sneak into the top 6. That's going to be their goal for the season. And if they want to do that, Pascal Siakam can be an integral part of doing that. So polarizing discussion, but overall, I'd say unless the deal is right, don't force it and keep Siakam.